How do you continue to hold on to your faith when the culture tells you you're wrong or in the minority? As a consequence, the faithful often suffer in loneliness thanks to you both. Okay, that's Anne Marie, actually from Coventry, England, on the other side of the pond there, giving us. That's interesting because, again, that's a different kind of suffering. You know, we've been talking more about the physical kind of situation, but here we're also talking about the emotional kind of suffering. I know one of the things that you mentioned on your website is that one of the root causes of the decline of faith among young people is the conflict between suffering and love. So this is something that impacts a lot of people today.
Yeah, I mean, as I've might break it down into a couple of different categories. You know, sometimes you know what's required. First of all, I do defend my faith right away. So when people challenge faith, my first reaction is to say, well, wait a minute here. What is the cause of your not believing in God? You know, is it because you think that science is contradicting God? If that's what you think, then you better know that 45% of bench scientists do profess belief in God, and the rest of them are not just atheists. The rest may be in anything from unprofessed theism to agnosticism, and a minority who are atheists. So that, and moreover, if you want to see the real scientific evidence for God, please go to my website, magiscenter.com. Lead anybody to my website, magiscenter.com. Have them read those free articles and look at the free videos on the evidence for God from contemporary physics. It's enormous evidence. And of course, so you just can't let yourself get locked in. Just say, look, I don't understand all this evidence, but here, take a look at some good scholarly papers by very fine physicists. Here, go to this website, and you can get all the information you want about the evidence for a beginning, the evidence for a fine-tuning in the initial constants and conditions of our universe, etc. So you can don't let it go by. If you can't answer the question, lead them to a good website like magiscenter.com. But if you try and get a fix on what's moving this person to challenge faith that's confronting you, sometimes it is personal suffering in their lives. And there, I think, I've written this new book, as I say, it'll be out in 2 months, called The Light Shines On in the Darkness, Contending with Suffering Through Faith. In that book, in chapter 7, I talk about the opportunities of suffering. I just think that Christians ought to Xerox off that chapter. No offense, Ignatius Press, but Xerox off that chapter anyway. And
we're all about evangelization here. Come on, evangelization.
Exactly, evangelization. Who
That's
cares
number
about
one.
the money?
Right.
Exactly. So Xerox off that chapter, but take them through those opportunities, because I just think, so many people waste suffering and they waste time resenting their sufferings instead of seizing the opportunities and the graces in suffering. But you, as a Christian, we have to go through those things with them. So again, the question, why do you think this way? If it's not a science deal, well, maybe it's a suffering deal. Maybe it's a third deal. The third deal is, well, religion has caused, all these kinds of wars, and look, today we see, we've got Islamic terrorists, and this is done in the name of religion, and so forth and so on. Again, I think what we have to do is point out immediately the good things that religion has done throughout the centuries. We have allowed ourselves to be adversely caricatured, and we never fight back. I mean, well, we do have apologists that fight back, but there's a lot of us who don't fight back. We just take the hit, and we got to start saying, hey, just a cotton picking minute here. Before Christianity, what did you have in the Roman Empire that was of any worth in terms of public welfare? Nothing. It was Christianity that started public welfare. And now, no surprise, that the Catholic Church is the largest of all, public welfare systems in the world. And of course, where was Rome, good old Rome, on the public education scene? Why, there was nothing. And all of a sudden, after Christianity, there's this huge public education, right beyond the Christian community, that turns into the largest public education system in the world, the Catholic Church today. Hey, where was good old Rome on the, what we call the public health scene, like hospitals and care for the sick, right? I mean, nowhere. I mean, essentially, it's the Christians who get the public health system going. No surprise that the Catholic Church is the largest international healthcare system in the world. Hey, where was good old Rome on social stratification and slavery? They were in the worst rungs of existence, practically enslaving 80% of the population. Are you kidding me? It was Christianity that broke it down by educating the slaves. It was Christianity who broke it down by bringing the slaves into the bureaucracy, bringing the slaves not just education, but public welfare and health, and by giving them status despite what the empire was doing to crush them. Hey, you know what? Let's just take a look at some good things about religion here before we get pegged with the Crusades again. Not to be put too fine a point and passionate on, but we have to confront the myth. Because honestly, we have been adversely caricatured, and I just gotta say, there's an article on the Magis Center website that has all this stuff in it about what did the teaching of Jesus do, and what did the church do in the early centuries all the way to today, and it's just take a look at that article.
Why do you think, Father? I understand what you're saying, and probably most of our audience would agree with you, but it does seem like you get outside of that sphere, and what you usually end up getting is that it seems today that people have this idea of this original blessing kind of thing, as if the natural way for people to act is to do all of these good things, and it's the structures that make them do these bad things, and so that it's just intrinsic to people to do all the things that you would, let's say, assign as a benefit of Christianity, or they'd see it as really the post-Enlightenment period that people have been liberated to find their true selves. And that's really, and it's just intrinsic to us to do the right thing. What do you say to that?
Yeah, of course, this is Rousseau's romantic ideal of the natural man. And of course, Rousseau was so absolutely wrong about this. You have the other side of Rousseau, who of course is Machiavelli, who just says, basically human beings are rotten bums to the core, and the only way you're going to control them is through these extrinsic kind of boundaries and restrictions, and who better to do it than the prince, right? Who better to do it than the despotic, prince and ruler who can come down with force and terror and make people, despite themselves, do something somewhat virtuous. So, hey, let's face facts. We got two different sides of the coin. And by the way, it just keeps going, certain people line up with Rousseau, certain people line up with Machiavelli on the view of human personhood. Well, the truth is, it's somewhere in between. God created us good, but we fell. There's real original sin. We went for the pride. My thought is, we went for the pride and the narcissism, probably 5 seconds after, we were created with free agency. The devil gets into the works and goes, you can be gods too. Really? Well, let me hear a little bit more about that. And we're off and running. But anyone who really believes that human beings are intrinsically good to the core, and we don't need any rescuing from an interior darkness, that there's no proclivity toward darkness, right, in us, that we are basically good to the core from the day we're born into the world. You need to just be around a 2-year-old coming into contact with his or her ego for the first time and really let it fly. Then, you're going to see, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't seem to add up. And of course, the church always held even after the fall, that human beings were at least 51% good, right? We didn't go the Calvinistic route of the complete fall of human beings. Nevertheless, there is a significant amount of darkness and a significant need for redemption. And if we don't find a way to get that redemption, both through the teaching, and I would say the teaching of Jesus, right, and through some form of grace, what I would call the Holy Spirit working through the church, the Holy Spirit working in our hearts, if we don't have that grace, if we don't have that Holy Spirit, if we don't have that teaching, I just think, and of course our own free will to muster, right, to follow this redemptive act, I think we're going to follow the darkness and how dark the darkness will be. And of course, I know this only speaking for myself. I just don't think I'm the old enlightened, intrinsically good human being. I'm really of the Augustinian philosophy. When I look at a real sinner in the newspaper, somebody who's really done it, I'm always thinking, there but for the grace of God go I. Right. I'm not under any illusions about my intrinsic sainthood, because it ain't there. And if somebody really thinks that, wow, could be a delusion instead of a reality.